I discovered a haunted school in the Midwest, but something followed me home. I never should have opened that door. It felt wrong the moment I touched the handle. A chill shot up my spine. I was just a curious kid, exploring the old-school building that had been abandoned for years. The rumors had been swirling. Whispers of ghostly figures, shadowy laughter echoing through empty classrooms. I thought it was just a story. I thought wrong. The air was thick with dust. It smelled musty, like forgotten memories trapped inside crumbling walls. Shadows danced in the corners, teasing me to come closer. My heart pounded like a drum as I walked through the cracked hallways. Windows were boarded up, letting only slivers of gray light spill in. Each step echoed ominously, almost mocking my bravery. The darkness felt alive, hungry, and waiting. That's when I heard it. A faint whisper that drifted into my ear, sending shivers down my neck. I froze. It sounded like a child's voice, sweet yet drenched in sorrow. "Help me," it echoed through the halls. My hands trembled. It was too eerie. There was nothing childlike in its tone. I could almost see the figure of a small girl standing in the distance, her eyes pleading, her face smeared with shadows. I took a step back. The floor creaked beneath me as I backed away. My breath quickened. That voice, it lingered, wrapping around my thoughts like a vine. Suddenly, something moved behind me. A gust of wind, strong and cold, slammed a door shut with a deafening bang, making me jump. My heart raced. I wasn't alone. I was never alone. The shadows seemed to shift, stretching and curling like smoke. I could hear the soft patter of feet, too many to count, echoing in the void. Panic set in. I rushed for the exit, but the door felt like it was miles away. The whispers grew louder, as if the very walls were taunting me, drawing me deeper into the horror. "Stay," they sighed, a chorus of dread. Dread pooled in my stomach as I glanced back, and in that instant, I saw her, the girl from the whispers, standing right behind me. Her eyes dark and hollow, her mouth twisted in a haunting wail. I turned to run, but the shadows closed in fast, a thick curtain of fear tangling around me. I could hardly breathe. My mind screamed for me to get out. I crashed through the door, stumbling into the cold air outside, gasping for freedom. I could feel it. Something was right behind me. I could almost see a dark figure blending into the twilight, stretching long shadows that clawed at my heels. That I escaped. Or so I thought. I had left it behind. But still, a chill draped over me like a heavy blanket. I felt it. I knew it had followed me home. Was it just my imagination? Or was that girl's lingering presence now a part of me? I locked the door, but the feeling stayed. The whispers didn't stop. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The following days dragged on, filled with a suffocating blend of dread and anticipation. Every shadow cast by the flickering streetlights outside my window promised the return of something sinister, something that wouldn't let me go. My heart raced at the slightest sound, a creak in the floorboards, the whisper of the wind slipping under the door. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. But then came the dreams. In the still of night, I found my sleep interrupted by relentless visions. The same girl from the school, her hollow eyes locked onto mine, beckoning me into a dark abyss where the air crackled with sorrow. I could hear the whispers stronger now, as if they were spiraling from my own thoughts. "Help us" each morning. I woke deeper in despair, feeling her presence lurking just at the edge of my mind. I brushed it off, telling myself I was merely tired. Yet something inside me whispered that this was more than fatigue. It was something malicious, burrowing its way into my soul. One stormy night, the atmosphere grew heavy with tension. Rain pattered violently against the windows, shaking the glass with relentless force. I curled up on the couch, trying to drown out the unsettling feeling gnawing at my core. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps padding softly on the hardwood floor above me, and my heart plummeted, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The house was empty, just me. Or so I thought. I forced myself to remain still, listening intently. The footsteps grew closer, moving from room to room, a casual exploration from something that shouldn't have been there. There was no mistaking it. This was not my imagination. That I climbed slowly up the staircase, every step feeling like a betrayal against my better instincts. The hallway stretched before me, shadows thicker than any darkness. I fumbled for the light switch, breath hitching in my throat. The bulb flickered once, then went dark, plunging me into an oppressive void. Helpless, a chorus like broken echoes surged through the air. Panic gripped my chest as I fumbled through the darkness, searching desperately for the source. My hands grazed the wall, seeking the familiar reassurance of stability, but instead, they met something cold, a small hand pressing against the wood, just above mine. I recoiled, scrambling backward, eyes wide with terror. Please, the voice now lodged in my ear, dripping with an intense sorrow that twisted my gut. Help us, don't leave us. As I backed away, desperately trying to escape, the temperature dropped, creating a fog that began to swirl in the empty space around me. Shapes began to materialize, twisted silhouettes rising from the darkness, their faces indistinguishable yet distinctly horrified. The little girl stood again among them, her once pleading eyes now filled with despair. Loneliness hung heavy, wrapping around me like a vice. They want to play? She whispered, and the walls trembled at her words. Before I could respond, one of the shadows lunged forward, a surge of cold air sweeping through the corridor, throwing me into the wall with a bone-jarring thud. The impact knocked the wind from my lungs. I gasped, scrambling to regain my balance. The shadows danced closer, fingers stretching out like elongated claws, eager to pull me into their depths. Heart racing in terror, I stumbled back down the hallway, a cacophony of whispers escalating as I sprinted for the staircase. Each step felt heavier, as if the very house was trying to hold me back, to drag me down into its dark secrets. Then, I heard it behind Meth, laughter, innocent and yet so cruel, echoing through the suffocating dark. I swung around, desperate to confront the source, but all that greeted me was swirling darkness. The shadows lunged, wrapping around my ankles like tendrils, pulling me down. As I toppled backward, the ground seemed to open beneath me, revealing a vortex of darkness, a sickening void that promised nothing but despair. I flailed, grasping at the air, but it was no use. I was falling, and far below, I could hear the voices of those lost echoing, taunting, hungry for more. Just before I slipped entirely into the abyss, I caught a glimpse of the girl's face, twisted in horror, her eyes wide with warning. Don't trust them. And then the darkness swallowed me whole. I awoke with a gasp, heart pounding as if it wanted to escape my chest. My surroundings felt all too familiar yet disturbingly different, the walls of my living room painted in soft moonlight, contrasting sharply with the shadows that seemed even deeper than before. I blinked, straining to shake off the remnants of the dream, but the weight of its horror pressed heavily on my mind. The faint whisper of the girl lingered in my thoughts like a haunting refrain. Scrambling to my feet, I darted towards the hallway, my heart still racing, desperate to convince myself it was all just a bizarre nightmare, that I hadn't really been swallowed by the darkness. But as I reached the staircase, a chill crept down my spine, and I froze in place, the silence around me thick and suffocating, and the stillness. I noticed something strange, a faint glimmer at the edge of my vision. I turned slowly, eyes narrowing against the thick shadows that lined the room. Then I heard Ida's soft thud from the kitchen, followed by the relentless sound of what could only be footsteps on the tile. They were lighter than the weight of despair that had haunted me earlier. This was something else, a mischievous echo of innocence turned monstrous. That I crept toward the kitchen, each step weighed down by the sinking feeling in my gut. The air was charged, electric with an unshakable dread. As I peeked around the corner, the lights flickered overhead, illuminating a grotesque scene before me. The table was laid out, as if for a gathering. In the center, a child's tea set sparkled under the dim light, cups lined up perfectly with tiny saucers. The atmosphere felt eerily festive. Yet, the sense of wrongness clawed at me like the shadows that nearly consumed me. The house, once silent and empty, seemed to hum with an unseen energy, the curtains fluttering without a breeze. "Help us," the whisper filtered through the air again, a chilling reminder of the tormenting plea echoing in my mind. Something stirred in the corner, small and blurred. I squinted into the dimness, discovering a faint outline of the girl, sitting cross-legged on the floor. She played with the dolls I had stored in the attic, their porcelain faces cracked, wearing smiles that didn't quite match the horror they witnessed. I caught her eye momentarily, an abundance of sorrow washing over me as she smiled. But then, twisting in her expression was a hint of malice, a ghostly haze surrounding her in the kitchen's flickering light. That I stepped forward, compelled yet terror-stricken. "What do you want from me?" I managed to whisper, voice quaking. Suddenly, the laughter erupted again, innocent yet off-kilter, an echo that sent shivers racing down my spine. The sound ricocheted off the walls, piercing and excited, as if they reveled in their own malevolence. The girl turned away, gesturing with a dainty hand, inviting unseen entities to join her. The doll's eyes glinted dangerously, watching, waiting. Every instinct screamed at me to flee. I turned to run, but was stopped cold as a figure emerged from the shadowed recesses behind the countertop. A towering shape, contorted and grotesque, looming large with an otherworldly presence. It appeared fluid, twisting like smoke yet emanating an unmistakable aura of dread. The faces of the lost flickered and faded within its form, their mournful expressions a collection of memories trapped in an eternal cycle of despair. "Help us," it thundered, shaking the very foundation of my sanity. With a primal instinct, I dashed towards the door. But as I reached for the handle, the laughter intensified, resonating through the very wood. A tangible barrier I couldn't break through. My pulse pounded like thunder in my ears. The shadows encased the room, whispering secrets of lives snuffed out, lives that now wanted a taste of my own. I spun around, adrenaline coursing through me. The little girl stood in front of the towering figure now, her tear-streaked face twisting in fury. "You can't leave. Not yet," she screamed in a voice layered with darkness, entirely unlike her previous innocence. All at once, the dolls sprang to life, their limbs jerking with unnatural speed, pulling their eyes upward like spotlights, illuminating their sinister grins, shadows dancing about them. The room closed around me, space tightening like a noose as I felt their collective energy pressing down, dragging me into their enigmatic game. Breathless, I screamed, but my voice was smothered by the cacophony, drowning under the weight of sorrowful howls, pleading cries, and the childlike laughter that spun in a sickening whirl around my mind. And just as darkness threatened to swallow me again, I felt a sharp tug on my sleeve. The girl, her eyes now devoid of tenderness, pulled me closer, hissing urgently, "If you leave now, you'll never become one of us." In that moment, I realized I was caught not just in the house's grip, but in a terrifying net woven by the very souls I had tried to escape. Everything blurred as shadows swirled, my heart screaming for mercy while the girl's maddening smile widened, chaos ensuring I'd either join them or perish facing the endless black lurking just outside the door. Then, the ground trembled beneath my feet once more, ominous and chaotic, as the whispers rose into a furious roar, drowning out my thoughts. "Stay with us forever." And just before I succumbed to the swirling madness, I felt the floor beneath me shatter, plunging me into the depth of their dark embrace. I fell, and the darkness swallowed me whole, pulling me down like a lead weight. Desperation clawed at my throat as I tried to scream, but no sound emerged. It felt as if the very essence of the house was consuming me, molding my fear into something far more sinister. I tumbled through an abyss, shadows coiling around me, whispering secrets of countless lost souls who once occupied this cursed place. When I finally landed, it was on something cold and unyielding. I gasped for air, my mind racing, heart pounding violently against my ribs. My eyes fluttered open to find myself in what looked like a decrepit classroom. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, chipped like dried skin, and the air reeked of mildew and age. Desks lay overturned, the chalkboard blackened with dark scribbles that twisted and writhed like a scrawl of insanity. I pulled myself into a sitting position and pressed my palms against the cool floor, trying to steady my breathing. "Where am I?" I muttered, the echo of my voice reverberating through the empty space, mocking my solitude. But I heard something else, whispers, almost childlike, bubbling up from the black corners of the room. "Come play with us," they lured. The hair on my arms stood erect as I scanned my surroundings. The dim light filtering in through grimy windows flickered, casting odd shadows that danced along the walls, alive and hungry. A chill swept through me with the realization that maybe I hadn't just fallen, perhaps I had been taken somewhere else entirely, a dark realm between the veil of this world and the next. The laughter of children echoed again, a melody twisted by despair, stirring something old and rotten within my chest. It made my skin crawl, brought memories of the girl at the tea party into vivid focus. Why was she a part of this? Gathering my courage, I scrambled to my feet and instinctively moved toward the door at the back of the room, the whispers growing louder with each step. I hesitated, hand hovering above the rusted handle. "You don't want to go out there," a voice lilted from behind. I spun around to face a figure, an apparition, a boy, his hair wild and eyes wide with longing. His form flickered like a dying light bulb, but the grief in his expression was palpable. "Why are you here?" I demanded, though fear knotted my throat. "What do you want?" "What you want," he replied, voice trembling, "is to leave. But you can't. Not until you help us." "Help?" My heart sank as rumors of nightmares from the past began surfacing. Stories of a vanished school children spoke of in hushed tones, of haunted spirits trapped within its walls where they had once sought knowledge and safety. "What happened here?" I pressed, the air thick with dread. "They came for us," he whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. "The ones who wanted to take us away. But we couldn't leave. We were too scared until you arrived." The room trembled as he spoke, and the chalkboard rattled, new words emerging from the darkness in the unsolvable script of madness. "To be free, you must awaken the others. They want to play." "Play?" I whispered, dread coiling tighter. The boy's eyes gleamed with something unsettling, an imprisoned madness that clawed at the corners of his gaze. "What do you mean?" "Join us," he urged, extending a translucent hand toward me, desperation etched on his ghostly face. "Safer in our realm. We can protect you." I recoiled and shot for the door, wrenching it open and stumbling out into the hall, breathless with fear. The echoes of laughter turned to angry wails, reverberating through the confined space as I sprinted away, the distorted faces of children morphing in the shadows, taunting me with smiles that revealed rows of teeth too sharp and white. Each classroom I passed was a time capsule of nightmares, the walls draped with forgotten memories, torn backpacks, abandoned shoes, and toys strewn across the floors like breadcrumbs leading to dark secrets. One door, deeper into the corridor, stood ajar, an otherworldly light spilling out. I could hear them more clearly now, a cacophony of cries urging me to step. Inside, a vision of twisted rides at an abandoned amusement park, laughing children stuck in endless loops of gaiety, yet trapped in purgatory. Their faces morphed, dropping the pretense of innocence, revealing a malevolence intertwining with joy that sent my pulse racing. "Please, don't leave us," they begged, voices growing frantic, now echoing off the walls like a storm. I hesitated at the threshold, staring into the blinding light, sensing something monumental awaited. The voices grew deafening, calling me to join them, offering the allure of understanding, of belonging. It thrummed in my bones, promising an escape from my terror. But as I stood there torn between the desire to understand their plight and the instinctual urge to flee, the air thickened, and the boy's voice broke through the storm of sound. "If you leave now, you'll belong to them forever." A sudden rush of cold air slammed the door shut behind me, sealing my fate. The light dimmed, and shadows engulfed me. Unable to turn back, terror gripped me as I was pulled into the chamber. The light pulsated, flickering dangerously, and the faces of the forgotten appeared before me, whispering sweetly yet sinister, "Stay with us, forever." And with a crash, The ground trembled ominously, revealing something beneath the surfacia, black mist rising, writhing like serpents, unveiling the truth that I'd been too afraid to face. A scream escaped my lips, blending into their chorus as I realized I was no longer just a visitor in their haunted school. I was the next chapter in their desperate tale. I stumbled into the swirling mass of black mist, panic flooding my veins as the anguished cries of children morphed into a haunting laughter. The ground beneath me felt unstable, shifting as if it were alive, striving to consume me whole. I gasped, lungs burning, and my heart raced at the sheer weight of despair that seemed to creep from every crack in the floorboards. The once vibrant light behind me flickered out completely. I stood in a cavernous darkness, swallowed by the echo of melancholic laughter. With a trembling resolve, I turned to face the figure of the boy, still flickering like a dying flame. "What are you?" I pleaded, my voice cracking with the weight of fear. His eyes had lost their ethereal glow, replaced instead with an emptiness that echoed the depths of despair I felt creeping into my own bones. "We are the ones left behind," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "The dreams that never woke up. If you help us, we can be free. But if you don't..." His voice trailed off, leaving a chilling silence in the air that felt more suffocating than the presence of the mist itself. "Help you?" My throat felt tight. "How? What do you want from me?" "Awakening the others," he murmured, glancing down a corridor engulfed in shadows. "They wait for someone like you." He motioned toward the snaking dark, where the outlines of more children loomed, their faces obscured, but I could feel their eyes intense and hungry upon me. A new unease settled in, every instinct screaming at me to run. As if reading my thoughts, the boy's expression darkened. "You don't have a choice. The longer you resist, the stronger the pull will be." Before I could respond, the classroom doors began to slam open and shut with a thunderous rhythm, the chaos echoing off the walls. Shadows flickered in and out of sight, revealing disembodied hands reaching towards me from the darkness, grasping and clawing, pulling me toward the heart of the school, deeper into its abyss. "Don't you want answers?" the boy asked, his voice pleading yet insistent. I could see furious reflections of sorrow in his eyes, images of 1,000 unshed tears trapped in his ghostly form. "You need to understand this isn't truly a place. It's a memory, an echo." He pointed at the flaring mist. "And you are at the center." The halls began to pulse with a strange energy, a rhythm that resonated in my skull as if the very structure of the building was awakening to make me part of its tragic narrative. Memories beat against my consciousness like waves, begging for release. I felt a tender pull, a siren's calling, singing sweetly about understanding those who had once lived here, how they suffered, how they had once thrived before the shadows swallowed them whole. "Help us wake them," the boy implored, but the vibrant pull of their cries cloaked my senses. It became nearly impossible to decipher between the whispers that begged for liberation and the warnings uttered by their trapped souls. As I stood paralyzed, the ground quaked again, and a horrifying chill slithered up my spine. The boy's shape blurred momentarily before the chaos reshaped him, his once familiar form twisting into something grotesque, a shadow within shadows, his laughter morphing into maddened shrieking that filled the air with a dread I could taste. And that moment, a dread realization struck me hard. For every pair of eyes that watched, there were whispers beckoning for sleep, eager to steal my consciousness. I could feel the energy swirling, the restless souls rising to claim their next anchor, their next victim. The ground buckled, revealing a yawning abyss beneath me, and as the whispers crescendoed into a full-on roar, the last coherent thought I had was a desperate plea. I lurched backward, but it was too late. A pair of icy hands locked around my wrists, dragging me toward the darkness, while a shrill voice cut through the cacophony with maddening clarity. "Stay with us, forever." With one final scream, I was thrust into the void. The darkness yawned open wider, swallowing the shrieks of the boy. I felt the world slip away as my consciousness evaporated until a searing light sprung forth, blinding me. "Welcome back," a voice said from somewhere far away, echoed but saturated with malice. "We've missed you." As my surroundings slowly came into focus, dread seeped back in as I realized I was once more in my own living room. But something was terribly wrong. The air was heavy with an otherworldly presence, and the laughter had transcended the school, crawling back home with me. The reflection in the mirror hanging on the wall distorted me own face stared back, but behind me, a multitude of shadows danced, eager and relentless. Their whispers now merged with mine, becoming a haunting serenade of my trapped regrets. I had brought them with me, and they were hungry. My heart raced, a frantic drum against my ribcage as I turned away from the mirror, the chilling realization that I had become a vessel for the very darkness I'd sought to escape. I could feel the presence of those children, their energy ebbing and flowing like an insidious tide. Every glance around my familiar living space filled me with growing dread. Shadows stretched across the walls, flickering with unholy life. "Get out," I muttered to myself, stepping back, but the walls pushed back in silent mockery. My own voice dripped with fear, the warning echoing against the growing whispers. And when I turned sharply towards the front door, it swung open with a soul-rattling creak, revealing only the void of night. I cringed as crickets chorused their eerie symphony outside, the sound curdling my blood. It smelled wrong, tinny and sharp, like iron tainted by time. I stepped backward and felt the cold grip of a new fear wrapping around me. The darkness beyond the doorway was thick, almost animate, swirling like the very mist that had engulfed me in the school. Suddenly, a soft thud resonated from the hallway, deep and insistent. My heart nearly stopped, the rhythm staggering as it dawned on me that I was no longer alone. The children had followed me, their restless spirits chasing after the remnants of their escape. I moved cautiously toward the sound, dread instilling rigidity into my limbs. The air grew heavier, thick with their unvoiced sorrows, weaving through my thoughts, unraveling my sanity at the seams. Another hollow knock resonated, this time louder, punctuated by a giggle soft yet sinister. I could hear their whispers drifting through the walls, tugging at my mind with fraying threads of despair. "Join us," they beckoned, sweet and sickly. "We want to play." Each step down the hallway became a monumental struggle as the oppressive energy coiled around me, urging me to give in. I shook my head violently, desperate to drown out the chorus of pleading voices. Just then, a flash of movement caught my eye, a wisp, the silhouette of a child darting past the living room towards the basement. "No, not the basement," I gasped, recalling the dark depths that hadn't just contained forgotten boxes, but had also harbored remnants of this school's nightmares. My own pulse thudded in my ears as I sprinted forward, intent on preventing whatever dreadful fate awaited in the depths below. But my feet seemed heavy, each step dragging against gravestones of untold despair as I reached the door to the basement. It swung open wider than I had ever seen, as if it held its breath, ready to exhale all the horror it had contained. Lurching forward, dread clawed at my throat. I peered intently down the creaking stairs, shadows congealing at the base, unbidden memories entwining with senses both familiar and foreign. The children were there, gathering, eyes shimmering with an unholy glow. "Awaken us," they urged, their voices melding into one oppressive insistence. "You belong with us." I took a step back, the air thickening around me until I felt it morphing into solid coldness, a tangible force that locked me in place. "What do you want from me?" I cried out, my voice breaking as palpable horror enveloped my being. Their laughter melded into an anguished howl, deafening, surrounding me as they rushed forward. I felt hands grasping at my ankles, pulling me toward the abyss. "To complete the story, to remember," they cried in unison, their faces now twisted masks of longing and despair, mouths screaming silent agony. I jerked away, stumbling backward, thrusting my hands into the dizzying darkness at the threshold of the stairs. I could see the me reflection merging with shadows in a grotesque dance, a child's form now, an unsettling distort of myself, feasting on my very essence. I was trapped. No escape would come. Screams echoed around me, mixing with the hysteria of forgotten laughter. More children appeared, flooding the basement stairs, their numbers swelling like a tempest. Every desperate plea mingled with the chilling laughter, creating a storm of shared memories, joy turning to fear, innocence spiraling into anguish. Just as I turned to flee, the shadows coalesced, trapping me in a vice of despair, and I heard the faintest whisper in my ear, as soft as a cobweb but sharp enough to crystallize my fear. You are home now. That I in that moment, I felt the ground shift beneath me. The world tilted, shadows flickered, and I was abruptly pulled into the depths of a memory I had never lived, where laughter morphed into cries for help, and the air thickened with an overwhelming sensation of loss. And then, in the pulsating darkness, I realized I could no longer tell if I was awake or lost in another layer of the shared nightmare. With a sudden rush of terrifying clarity, I understood. I was both haunt and haunted, awakening more than just the children that night. The pulse of shadows clawing at me intensified, pulling me towards the encapsulating dark until I was suspended between realities. But something surged through the void, erasing the edges of my vision. It whispered secrets of those who lost their way long before met those who yearned for freedom. And then it happened. A sharp scream pierced through the depths as the shadows stilled, waiting. I was not relinquished to oblivion. I had become a conduit, and the real anniversary of horror was just beginning. As the world around me began to splinter into 1,000 shards of light and shadow, the children raised their hands in unison, an eerie chorus echoing through the dimness, demanding my next breath. Open the door to the past. Then there was silence, an emptiness stretching out infinitely, as cold hands brushed the nape of my neck and a voice as crisp as glass sliced through the air. Your turn is coming. In that moment, I felt the terrible weight of inevitability, knowing that what waited beyond wasn't just horror. It was a revelation that would change my existence forever. The room flickered momentarily with a pulse of warmth, but the moment faded, leaving only the chill of fear clinging to my skin like damp cloth. The children's whispered requests turned into low, humming chants that surrounded me as their presence thickened rhythmically, creating an unsettling pulse in the air. Join us, they murmured, their words weaving through my thoughts, tugging at the fringes of memories I had struggled to forget. My heartbeat drummed wildly in my ears, threatening to drown out their incantations. I stumbled back, fighting against the paralyzing grip of dread that held me in place, cold bile bubbling in my throat. No, I yelled into the suffocating silence, desperation clawing at my throat as the shadows flickered around me, feverishly alive. I won't do this. The children remained unfazed, their eager faces clouded with anticipation. With each heartbeat, their chaotic dance grew more frenetic, feeding on my resistance, a delicious feast of fear. Suddenly, I felt sharp pain on my wrist, a prickling sensation, and I looked down to see a shadowy hand gripping me. It wasn't tangible, but I felt it. Familiar and suffocating, like a memory freshly clawing its way to the surface. You're one of us now, a voice whispered, rich and ominous, threading through the gibbering chaos. Before I could respond, a gust of wind swept through the basement, ruffling the pages of a forgotten notebook resting on a dusty shelf. It fluttered open, revealing a story, scrawled in a child's jagged handwriting, detailing the very darkness I had tried to escape. As I skimmed through the pages, the words seeped into me, igniting hazy visions of laughter carried away by screams, faces swirling, some joyfully innocent, others twisted in pain. The descriptions of their sorrows mirrored my own turmoil. Tears pooled in my eyes as their stories merged with mine, siphoning my energy, feeding my mournful spirit into their growing presence. Remember, they sang, their voices rising in a fevered crescendo. A new vision sparked within the pages, flashes of a past I had never known, yet felt intimately. A playground overrun with shadows, children vanishing like snuffed-out candles, their giggles turning into muffled cries. Suddenly, the light above flickered, warping the shadows into grotesque shapes as my reflection in the darkened glass morphed again. I saw not just the flickering specters, but another Maya version blended with the children, hollow-eyed and lost, waves of sorrow echoing through my features. Stricken with the realization, I staggered backward, pushing back against the clamor filleting my senses. But there was nowhere else to go. The room began spiraling inward, darker still, as words melded with the shadows. You can help us. You know the way, unlock what you fear, they urged, their voices a cacophony of longing mixed with despair. The air crackled with unseen energy, creating a barrier that kept me trapped in this hellish tableau. Suddenly, amidst the swirling chaos, the laughter stopped. An icy silence blanketed the room. I looked up, and my breath hitched at the sight before me. Their faces twisted into masks of pleading agony, and their eyes brimming with tears conveyed a chilling urgency. "Open the door," they cried in unison, pointing toward the dusty door in the corner of the basement. With a shiver of instinct, I understood that they were not merely seeking to reclaim a forgotten past. They were readying for something far more sinister. I took a hesitant step toward the door, drawn by an unseen force. Each inch forward felt like wading in molasses, resisting the flood of dread filling my chest. A sudden screech pierced the air, a sharp, blood-curdling sound that echoed as if the very walls themselves ached with anguish. I froze, heart racing as shadows danced with ferocity, boiling with malevolence. "No!" I screamed, confusion morphing into terror, feeling the energy shift around me like a tightening noose. In that moment, I felt the shadows turning against me, swirling violently as the whispers grew to a deafening roar. I collided with the door, pushing against the old wood in a panic, but it wouldn't budge. And then, just as my desperation peaked, it swung open, revealing a blinding light that sliced through the thick gloom. I shielded my eyes against its brilliance, feeling the grip of despair loosen only for a moment. But the gentle tug of relief vanished as I heard Ida's voice, rich and old, slicing through the air with cruel clarity, making my blood run cold. "Welcome home, my child." The light flickered dimly as the shadows surged forward, and the last vestiges of comfort evaporated into a raging storm of grotesque faces that filled the threshold. Each one, a child once lost to the darkness, now twisted, a mocking grin bridging the chasm between life and something else entirely heart-thundering. I understood the choices I had never grasped before. They were shedding their illusions, wanting me to step over the threshold. As their faces morphed into something unspeakably horrifying, I knew my decision would lead me to the depths of unspeakable horror and possibly the forever darkness I had never dared to fathom. And just as I took a shuddering breath to say no, the floor trembled violently beneath me, and the piercing grin of the children twisted into a nightmarish shriek, echoing, drowning my thoughts in a tide of chaos. "Join us," they shrieked as the foundations of the house began to crumble, darkness overtaking. Before I could move, the world spun away, and I was forced to confront the terrible truth. There was no escape from the haunting grip of their laughter, or the betrayal of the past, still unseen and waiting for me within. The floorboards creaked ominously underfoot as I struggled to rise, the shadows pulsating with an eerie vitality as they encroached upon me. The children's shrieks morphed into a chorus of lament, a haunting symphony that echoed through the dust-laden basement, each note tinged with anguish, promising that their love was ever present, just as their malice was. I could feel the dread radiating off them, wrapping tight around my throat like a vine constricting its prey. I scrambled backward, skidding against the rough stone wall and fighting the sheer terror clawing at my insides. As I pressed my back against the damp, clammy surface, the hairs on my neck bristled. Something else lingered in the shadows. The cold began to seep deeper into my bones, merging with my fear, until what I felt was more than just dread. It was a sense of unbidden recognition. It was him. "Jeffrey," I murmured, shivers dancing down my spine as fragments of memories flooded forth, decades old yet vivid as the new. He was trouble even in life, a boy whose laughter unnerved me, whose tiny hands had pushed me deeper into peril always wanting me to follow him past boundaries. But the last time I saw him, he hadn't laughed. His eyes had shown nothing but despair, a harbinger of darker things. Though we were young, I should have known. He was there, at that cursed playground, the place where happiness went to die. "Find me," his voice whispered, a seductive whisper slipping from beyond the veil that separated us, teasing just on the edge of my mind. I looked around desperately, feeling as though the walls were closing in, ready to swallow me whole. The children were a sea of dread, but their true horror was not alone. Their pallid faces revealed behind them the gaping emptiness, the dark essence waiting with a hunger greater than death itself. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the basement, my heart thumping in sync. I turned wildly towards the door, a vision forming. Jeffrey, standing there drenched in shadows, beckoning with a ghostly hand, his eyes wide but darkened by the depths of the abyss behind him. It was a tragedy that I had long escaped, but now it bubbled back to surface in tendrils of nostalgia intertwined with fear. "Join us," the children cooed, their voices laced with the madness of forgotten secrets, pleading. At that moment, everything around me transformed. The dust motes became floating orbs of despair, swirling chaotic patterns through the gloom, each orb whispering promises laced with malice, urging me to dive deeper into the abyss of memory. Pain and laughter blurred together, encasing me in shimmering memories that I couldn't distinguish as mine or theirs. And that was where the horror lay. That I blinked rapidly, trying to clear the suffocating visions clouding my mind. My pulse raced as I caught sight of a tiny, wizened figure in the corner. Alina, the notorious younger girl from our grade who vanished without a trace, now stood sentinel, her stitched mouth forming grim words that echoed through the turbulence. "You have to wake before it wakes you." "What do you mean?" I stammered, fighting against the pull of dread that was now palpable, intimate, coiling through the air like mist. "Unlock the door," she pleaded, voice fractured and distant, pointing towards the splintered wood that remained ajar, light pouring from outside, a treasure of safety lying just beyond reach. Yet the echoes of the children rose again, drowning out her words, drowning me in their torrent. Eager to escape the grip of the past, I lunged forward, hoping to slip past the veil between shadows and light, but they surged toward me, thousands of tiny hands grasping, pulling me back. I felt the grip close like a vice, teeth gnashing, their gargantuan gnaws of despair filling my mind. "You can't run. You must remember." Suddenly, the ammonia stench of decay filled my lungs as the floor began to convulse violently, shadows writhing, consuming even the remnants of light. I heard Jeffrey's voice again, hollow yet urgent, whispering secrets veiled in sorrow. "Use what you have lost. You know what to do." Panic urged me as reality splintered around me, things churning, folding in on themselves, revealing glances of forgotten Hororsa childhood home, an open grave, the faces of children in eternal agony, joined with those who succumbed to darkness. With every flicker of panic, they paraded forth, their laughter rising in spiraling crescendos, old wounds wrought anew. Then I saw it. The ethereal glimmer at the corner of the room, the other door. It stood covered in cobwebs, revealing nothing of the world beyond. In that moment, instinct clawed forward, reminding me that some keys unlock more than simply doors. They unshackle despair, allowing it to seep through the cracks into the void. I was poised to make my choice, step into the unknown and confront the more profound horror waiting behind the other door. The thoughts surged through me like wildfire, yet dread rooted me in place, the twisted expressions of the children causing my very bones to ache with recognition. I stood at the breach of the impossible, and just as I reached for the handle, the children's cacophony crescendoed into a murderous wail. The shadows collapsed upon one another, forming one solid entity that surged forward with terrifying velocity. Arms outstretched, faces of every lost child's despair aligned in a furious wave. "Join us or perish," they screamed, the basement shuddering as time distorted around me, swirling downward into the vortex of forgotten memories and unspeakable horror. In the relentless darkness, my hand froze on the knob, and time stretched infinitely as I was left to choose, one door leading to the hidden secret of salvation and understanding, the other sealing me in an eternal descent into the very heart of unspeakable fate. The door handle began to pulse beneath my fingertips, the vibrations echoing my frantic heart. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to abandon the pursuit of that ethereal glimmer promising escape. Yet, it was as if a tether bound me there, the children's cries growing louder, merging harmoniously with the muted terrors swirling in the shadows. Each flicker of my gaze caught the anguished remnants of childhood lost faces that gazed back with silent screams, their gaping mouths conveying more horror than words could encapsulate. Suddenly, the basement erupted into chaos as the malice coalesced into a blunt force. The entity lunged, corporeal yet intangible, casting a veil over my very thoughts. I recoiled, stepping back, heart racing like a trapped animal. My eyes darted toward Alina's petite figure offering help amidst the chaos, her presence radiating a sorrowful light that battled against the impending gloom. "Unlock it," she urged, the stitches on her lips twisting grotesquely as if she were trying to scream, yet capped by her silent torment. Before it finds you. The children surged forward with glee, depravity laced in their laughter as the floor pulsated beneath Maya, living, breathing thing, urging me toward the other door. I staggered backward, grasping the original handle tight, the cold metal biting into my palms like a warning. In that moment, the air thickened, heavy with dread, twisting my thoughts into a snarl of confusion. I was terrified of what lay beyond the door, but more terrified of what would happen if I remained here, clutched by the shadows of what should never be. Remember. Alina screamed, her voice rising above the roaring tide. Before the past becomes your present. Memories flickered like dying fireflies. The schoolyard where I had once played, Jeffrey's laughter rippling through the air, becoming a haunting echo of innocence blistered by dark fate. Our final night escapadeth game of hide and seek that became a nightmare, leading us into the infinite fog of the woods, the snare of empty promises, and then nothing. Just darkness. Gritting my teeth, I made the decision: no longer could I be a passive vessel for the torment of those lost. I turned sharply toward the other door, an instinctual grasp pulling me toward its decrepit presence. I flung it open against the frantic tide, ignoring the shrieks of the children as cold air poured through the threshold, wrapping around Maya, contrasting embrace against the suffocating darkness. As I stepped inside, a blinding light surged forth, momentarily illuminating a grotesque scene. The room was vast, much larger than the exterior suggested, a cavernous domain filled with the remnants of forgotten lives and lost hopes. Desks stood scattered like tombstones, overturned chairs bulging with dust. There, against the far wall, a large mural depicted children playing a vibrant scene turned grotesquely dark as each face held a hidden malice, smiles stretching impossibly wide, eyes like voids witnessing horrors none should bear. In panic, I looked back over my shoulder, expecting the children to surge in after me, an army of despair ready to reclaim me, but they remained on their side of the threshold. Their faces distorted, mouths opening wide in exaggerated wails, while the walls trembled, as if the very fabric of fate bore witness to my act of defiance. From the corner of my eye, I noticed something move. A shadow flickered just beyond the mural, coalescing into a figure, gaunt and elongated. The light dimmed, a shroud pulling close, and I squinted against the encroaching darkness. As it stepped into view, I recoiled. It was Jeffrey, no longer the boy I once knew, but a husk of anguish and despair. His eyes, clouded and hollow, bore into me with an intensity that ignited the dread coiling inside my chest. "Why did you leave us?" he hissed, voice a serpentine slither through the suffocating air. "You could have saved us." I staggered back, realization crashing over me like waves of icy water, the truth I had buried deep in my own psyche. I was never meant to be the innocent. I was the harbinger of their fate, the soul that helped bring their torment into being. "Stay with us," he rasped, extending a skeletal hand. Behind him, the mural appeared to ripple. The joyous children twisted, their faces merging with cruel distortions of laughter and weeping. An oppressive force grew stronger, shoving me further into this torturous landscape of memories made tangible. I cried, scrambling backward, desperate to escape the suffocating grip that fastened around my throat. As I stumbled, I saw the door behind me begin to warp, its frame splintering grotesquely, shadows pulling at the wood as if it were alive and hungry. Just as I turned to flee deeper into this nightmarish domain, the very ground shook beneath me, and the mural exploded outward, revealing dozens of eyes staring from within, pale, sunken, grieving souls trapped by their ethereal chains. They beckoned me closer, their soft whispers mingling with the children's maddening chant. "Join us or be lost forever." With terror radiating through my body, I dove deeper into the room, chasing the promise of safety only to find an overwhelming sense of dread closing in from all sides. I could almost hear my heart imploding with fear, the oppressive air wrapping tighter around me, threatening to snuff out any flicker of hope. And in that nightmarish moment, as I realized I was navigating a labyrinth crafted by my own inner demons, the door slammed shut behind me with a resounding finality, trapping me as the shadows consolidated into a solid wall of despair. "Welcome home." A chorus of familiar voices whispered, merging with the echoes of Jeffrey's laughter, horrifyingly warped, ever present, as they spiraled into an excruciating crescendo of unending pain. Suddenly, as I stood paralyzed, feeling uncertainty consume me, I felt a hand brush against my back, a chilling touch that froze me in midair, just before it began to pull me back into the encroaching darkness. It was an unyielding force, promising more than just oblivion. It seemed to promise the exact fate that had befallen the children, the one I had tried to escape, and in that moment, my last remnants of hope dissipated into the void, leaving only the merciless whispers around me, and then, darkness claimed me whole. The silence enveloped me, deeper than any darkness I had ever known. It was the kind of darkness that felt sentient, wrapping around my mind like a noose and squeezing tighter with each passing thought. I fell to my knees, the cold floor pressing against my palms as terror surged through my veins like poison. "Help us!" the chorus stirred again, an echo that shattered the silence like glass, cutting me to my core. The little girl and her friends crowded my mind, ensnaring me in a web spun from suffering and sorrow. Had I ever truly left that haunted school? Or had I simply become a part of its macabre tapestry, woven into the very fabric of its tragedy? In horror, I realized I was not merely lost. I was home. The weight of that realization collapsed around me, forcing me to confront the truth I had buried deep in my heart, a truth I thought I could outrun. Each innocent laugh and mournful cry wrapped around my soul like barbed wire, pulling me back into a narrative I had sought to escape. With every breath, I could feel them gnawing at the edges of my mind, trying to reclaim all that I thought I left behind. "Why did you leave us?" A voice cut through the void, deep and sorrowful. It was the boy Geoffrey's eyes, devoid of light yet heavy with a pleading darkness. The classroom flickered around us, morphing into swirling visions. The laughter of children twisted under the weight of despair, seeping into every crevice of my being. Because I didn't want to be a part of this. I didn't want to be like you, I shouted desperately, as if speaking louder could change the course of fate. But the shadows only chuckled, and in their glee I felt the ground tremble. "Help us awaken the others," they urged. "Our stories bind us, but we await a bridge." A shudder of icy dread coursed through me. I understood what that meant. They sought to awaken the others, those still trapped in the haunted school. But in doing so, they would latch onto my soul more tightly than before. "I can't," I cried out, frustration and fear clawing at my throat. "Let me go!" With a sudden rush, the laughter turned into an echoing howl, flooding the space and drowning out my thoughts. The memories of the school surged back, thicker than the shadows around me. I was not just a guest in their tale. I was entwined in it, the very heart of their tragedy. In that moment, despair coiled around my soul, forcing me to confront the horrifying truth buried deep within me. I had been searching for freedom, but instead, I had opened the door to a fate far worse than death. I had become the unwitting captor of the darkness that clawed its way from the depths of the school. The raw pain I felt in their eyes reflected my own. Their pleas echoed my own fears, and I stood at a precipice, ready to either succumb to the chaotic ambivalence surrounding me or fight against its seductive whispers. Then something shifted in the air, a terrible, familiar force pulsing through the room. The shadows coalesced into a solid figure, and from them emerged the children, faces blossoming from the darkness. Their eyes glimmered with malice, no longer childlike but twisted and wretched, formed from a venomous blend of longing and pain. "You will join us forever," they chorused, a deadly hymn resonating throughout the room, melding with the shadows that surrounded me. As their hands reached out, my heart thundered wildly. "Stop!" I screamed, more out of desperation than hope. "I can help you, I will help you." And then, suddenly, I knew what I needed to do. Gathering every ounce of strength, I closed my eyes and plunged deep into the churning chaos within. I seized the narratives of the lost children, their stories whispering through me like wind across a desolate landscape. I had to face them, had to confront each one of those hearts frozen in time. With every thought, I breathed life into their horrors. Each memory I resurrected became a force to counter the vile presence around me. Whispers turned into screams, but I pressed on. I saw them. Alina, Her stitched lips cracked open. Jeffrey, lost amidst the ruins of his laughter. They reached out, rain-soaked tendrils beckoning me to this confrontation. "Help us remember," they shouted in unison, their voices swelling again, and suddenly, I saw the truth. They weren't just lost. They were my kin. I was part of their anguish, part of their tragic end. And then it happened, a cascade of memories unleashed, illuminating this twisted place in brilliant bursts of light. I saw the truth laid bare. The school was not merely a trap. It was a sanctuary of lost hope, a refuge for souls seeking release. Despair throbbed through every surface around me, and I understood my role at last. "You're not just shadows, you're echoes of what once was," I shouted, my voice clearer now, threading through the chaos. With each word, I stepped deeper into their story, awakening their pain, their dreams, releasing the gnawing doubts. The visions brightened as the spirits flickered around me, their outlines igniting in bursts of color. The deeper I descended into their memories, the more they swelled my resolve. Together, I cried, embracing the stories I had feared. Together, we will find peace. The laughter shifted, unraveling into a symphony of anguish, then subsiding into quietude. The shadows began to thin, revealing outlines of the other children, memorized faces cradled in anticipation, their eyes glimmering with the promise of something more, something other than despair. But as dawn broke within the heart of the shadows, I felt an icy hand grip my heart, squeezing it mercilessly. "You cannot leave. This is your home now." Did I end that single moment? I knew I wasn't free yet. The entity I had awakened wasn't just malevolent. It thrived on chaos and pain, thriving from the stories of those who had once sought solace within these walls, but had become imprisoned long before I arrived. An echoing wave of fear washed over me as I began to understand the enormous sacrifice I had unwittingly undertaken. In urging their release, I had not just set the hopes of the children free. I had also unlocked something far more sinister, the door to the truth that only grew darker with each revelation. The shadows pulsed with palpable energy, hungry to consume everything within reach. And as their paralyzing laughter cascaded through the air, merging and twisting with memories of joy and gut-wrenching despair, I realized with horror that the childlike innocence I had fought to protect was slipping through my fingers. In mere moments, I knew the truth. Me liberation had merely been an illusion, a seductive game woven into the tapestry of their existence. I was the next thread in their haunting narrative, drawn inexorably into a web of darkness, longing to play forever. Help us awaken the others or perish. The laughter crescendoed into an unbearable din, drowning my own consciousness. And just like that, with the cruel happiness of children who knew better than I, shadows claimed me. The last thing I saw were their faces, twisted into glee as I fell deeper into the darkness. A truth so chilling it froze me in place, echoed within the hollows of my mind. The true horror never left the shoelets, simply waited for me to return.